science works, what the principle also says is that there's a scores of behavioral, industrial, and organizational psychologists have done a lot of work about how the leader's behavior, the employee behavior skills can change, or they can be, kind of modified. How can we create alignment with business objectives and achieve the desired outcomes? Companies and practitioners like us, the HR professionals, it is upon us now to use that bit of knowledge, that bit of wealth of information, and make it into deployable processes. At the end of it, what happens is only implementation matters. What's there in the book, what's there in your mind, what's there in our presentation, what we discussed today, it probably is of very, very little value if we don't put it to use, if we don't apply it. And hence, whatever we design, whatever we do, it has to become implementable. What we heard in the chat, what we read in the chat, a lot of responses also said that, HR should do it, you do it, I will do it, I will sign it. We need to step back and think about it. That interview assessment form, that promotion recommendation form, that assessment or that appraisal, did it add value? Did people really find merit in filling those forms or following those processes? Managers typically want to succeed. They have a challenging role. The competition in the market, especially in these testing times, we are in the COVID-19 times. Managers have a lot of challenge, be it anybody, actually, even HR managers. How to really go along with business, how to arrest the revenue drop, how to increase the profitability, how to have the business sustained, how to really go about it. With the intensifying competition, more challenging times, difficult economies, every manager wants to succeed. And hence, if we are able to design a process, if we are able to give them input, if we are able to guide them with something that adds value towards their success, there is no reason why they should not adopt it and take it. That being the principle. Yet all the processes we may design, everything we may design, a lot of times there is a black box around HR processes. A lot of times people do not believe in them. They say, oh, you take a lot of information, nothing comes back. You take a lot of inputs, but nothing comes back. This happens with a lot of, say, employee engagement tools, pulse surveys, or even line manager feedback, where we take information, but nothing comes back. Transparency and accountability. Transparency about why we are doing what we are doing. Transparency about how we are doing. Accountability. If people do not do something, if that is something which is agreed organization-wide, what is the accountability? What is the consequence of doing it? What is the reward? What is the accountability? What is the consequence of not doing it? Those processes, those things really define the success of our processes. Please feel free to ask any question anytime in the chat. If you have any query at any point in time, or you can keep it for a Q&A session that we will have at the end of the session. Okay. Coming to the OPTM design steps, using the value complexity curve, one of my very, very interesting, very favorite subjects around the OPTM. Before we get on to that, let's have a quick vote, and there is a context to why we are using the poll at this stage. So very simple. So in everybody's goal sheet, typically we also have goals 1, 2, 3, 4, and we also have weightages in a lot of organizations. So the question is, if you think these weightages add value. Okay, let's not scribble on the screen, please. Okay. Okay. So in your, so 80% of us feel that the weightages that we assign to different goals, they help in achieving the desired results. Okay. We will come back to this once again. All the questions that we are asking, we will review them towards the end of the session. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Okay. So, Anurag, can we clear the screen? Okay. Okay, let's talk about the OPTM design steps. What we're saying is that we should, while designing any process, we should be extremely clear about what our problem statement is. Even at times when we are told about a people challenge and a talent challenge, it probably circles back to something which has a very, very big or a sizable business impact. It's always good for HR to know and be curious about what's the business challenge and what's the ultimate business challenge that we are trying to solve through a people intervention. The recommendation is that we go around solving, knowing and working towards solving that business problem. For example, if somebody talks about how can talent support business today and tomorrow, how can I improve the, how can I have more futuristic leaders? Probably the line of sight is how do we create leaders who bring in success ideas, business verticals, revenue earning, or profitability generating leaders for tomorrow. How do we get the succession in place? How do we create leaders who take up more markets, newer markets, and turn them into profit centers? That being there. Start with science, academic research. We've talked about it earlier as well. There is enough and more science, lot of information, wealth of information available already through behavioral scientists, industrial psychologists, and a lot of research work which has been happening in the recent times. It's incumbent upon people like us, the HR professionals, to really go around, go find that information and put it to purpose, put it to deployment. As we said earlier, only implementation matters. So we must design processes and put them to use. When we are designing processes, we must look at simplicity. What is the easiest? What is the most people friendly? What is the most line manager friendly way to achieve a goal? Can we do that? Can we become that HR manager of a CEO too, who not only found a simple recipe that met the objective, but also created that bit of, pre-mixed the entire dry material so that the CEO doesn't have to worry about the ratios and again mix the ingredients and do something. So can we create that kind of value add? Every process that we design, every action step that we design, we must question it on its validity, on its value add, and whether or not is it adding unnecessary complexity. Even if it adds complexity, is it adding the disproportionate value to business or to the line manager? Is it making his life easier, more worthwhile, or more successful? Or is it, what is the accountability? How do we make sure that it happens? Why should a line manager do it? Is there a, like we talked about it, is there a positive consequence to it? Is there a way in which Newton's first law of motion, everything continues to be in a state of inertia unless you kind of provide a push? Unless you make people do it, they may continue to be in inertia. That force as well could be internal. A lot of people are self-driven. But for those who are not, what is our framework of making them do it? Transparency. What's the right amount of information sharing? To what extent, to what level should we go deep in terms of sharing information with people? What is the outcome? Is there an apparent ownership? Is there an apparent onboarding, adoption of an idea? What is the harm in telling? So we must question, Whenever we are, keeping information from people, what is the achievement by doing so? At the end of it, the idea which is well designed, well created, but if it's not implemented well or not implemented or not sustained, it just withers away. So implementation, once again, and I can't overemphasize on this, implementation is all that matters. Okay, value complexity curve. Just have a good look on around the curve for about 30 seconds, and then we'll talk about it. We have the effort and complexity on the x-axis and the value added for manager. Just think about it. In some sense, whenever we are doing something in our day-to-day life, designing any HR process, isn't this the dilemma that we come across? Don't we make those judgment calls around what are we doing, what value does it add, and what is the effort that the line manager has to put? Don't just focus on the talent problem. Develop a deep know-how of the linked business challenge. Solving the talent challenge is not a destination. It's probably just a means to get to the business, solving a business challenge. And when we do this, when we look at our process design, when we look at solving any problem, we should add steps towards solution, bit by bit, small incremental steps that work our way towards solving the people challenge and in turn the business challenge. If we can do it first time right, which is a rarity, great. But do take pride in doing it in an iterative manner. Process of input, design, test, and repeat. And once you have designed a process and you are at, on implementation, it's good to gather feedback from the user. And don't make changes too frequently. So in HR processes, one of the very, very repeated feedback by line managers is also at times, you gave me one form yesterday, you're giving me another form today. What is it? And that's probably one of the reasons why we saw in the first question that we talked about, why should I do it? You change too many things too quickly. Yesterday you had these set of forms, today you have these set of forms. Why have you added this? Why have you deleted that? Those kind of questions. Can your process design be such that it adds value without bringing in significant complexity? For example, when you are designing a new performance management system, do the line managers have to calculate the productivity? So if you are a sales manager, and you have 10 people under you, or you have your manager, then do they have to look at the Excel data, download the dump from the system, and then kind of work on Excel, do the calculation on their own? Or can the HR design a process where they value productivity, but the relative productivity and the productivity against the set objective is pre-incorporated in the system when the line manager goes to fill the appraisal forms in the system? Let's talk about something that we spoke of earlier, adding weightages to the goal sheet. Think about it. A lot of times people have 4, 5, 6, 7 goals in a goal sheet. And sometimes, none of the weightages is less than 10%, I would imagine. But if there is any goal which carries a weightage which is 10%, 12%, is there a significant or a calculate worthy difference between a 25% weightage and a 30% weightage? Does an employee sit in an 8-hour workday and say that I spent 25% of 8 hours on one subject and 30% of 8 hours on another one? Does that happen ever? Or is it humanly possible to really think about these 25%, 30% on a regular day-to-day basis? Does it really add value? Does it really program an employee towards a certain kind of behavior? To what extent this 25%, 30%, 5% difference make a life impact? Isn't it sufficient to say that anything which is on goal sheet, if it is anything more than a 5, 4 or a 5, at max 5 goals on the goal sheet, it's probably irrelevant. For a normal human being, for actually anybody, focusing on anything more than 3, 4 items or 4 or 5 goals or at any point in time, is it humanly possible to really have so much of divergence in your focus? And if the focus is anything less than 20% or 15% on anything, does it really matter? Look at it through the lens of value added versus the complexity that comes along when you talk of adding weightages to the goal sheet. In this new context, I would like you to take the poll. Okay, so before we come to that, sorry, I'm jumping the gun. Let's hear Mark out what he has to say about the value complexity curve.
As you try to simplify and add value to your talent management processes, be sure to use the value complexity curve from One-Page Talent Management. The value complexity curve is both a key tool and a key part of the philosophy of One-Page Talent Management. Our belief is that implementation is everything. That if we simply get talent management practices implemented, they're going to deliver the results that you're looking for. And that if we can prove to managers that the practice adds more value to their life than it adds complexity, they're much more likely to use it. You can apply the value complexity curve when you're designing a process by evaluating every element that you add and asking yourself, does this particular element, this step in a process, this box on a form, this data request from a manager, does it add more value to their life than it adds complexity? Also, when you're done designing the process, evaluate the entire thing on that same scale. Does this process as a whole add more value to a manager's life than it does complexity or effort required? If you're auditing your existing talent management practices, use the exact same mindset. Consider anything on that sheet of paper guilty until proven innocent. Whether it's a step in a process, a box on a form, a data request from a manager, every element needs to prove that it adds more value to a process than it adds complexity. If you use the value complexity curve when you design your talent management practices, I can guarantee you they'll come out OPTM perfect.
Okay. So the value complexity matrix, we talked about it now. Okay, I've got one query, and let me quickly answer that query from somebody. What is OPTM is the question. Let me describe you once again for the benefit of everybody. OPTM is not just about putting everything on one page. It's more about the mindset. It's more about the approach. It's more about the putting science first, designing simple and easy processes which are deployable, and then ensuring that there is a transparency and accountability around it. So, okay. So those are the points that Mark had to say about the entire OPTM, entire value complexity matrix. Can we now move on to a quick poll? We talked about the, okay, just give me a moment. Right, let's vote, and then we'll all talk. Let's see if we have a few converts now. Okay, so 6%. Okay, not bad, not bad to start with. In 10 minutes, if there is a 6% convert, I'm sure I'm pretty happy actually. Okay, so the idea being that, we are all deeply, there are a lot of things that we have seen happening as HR processes, as people processes, and a lot of it is taken at the face value, and we have not really necessarily questioned it. So is the case with a lot of writing the goal sheet, for example, writing the self-assessment for that matter. That's something that we can talk about it at another point in time. A lot of HR processes or the talent management processes need to be seen in the value complexity framework and really looked at whether or not they add value. At this point, let me just pause and see if somebody else wants to ask any questions. You can just write on the chat box, and Anurag will unmute you. If you want to ask any question, please feel free. We'll just spend a couple of minutes there. You can write your questions in the chat as well. We'll take a couple of questions and then we move on. Okay, fine. Okay, thank you. We'll go a bit faster now. Okay, so I don't see any questions coming. Okay, so let's quickly go through the OPTM talent framework. Basically, that the framework is the companies must look to audit their talent process using the OPTM audit framework. The talent philosophy serves as the rules of the road for the company by setting clear talent principles and serving as a business focused lens to evaluate whatever we want to deliver as HR in the entire business framework. An example would be, typically in my experience, I saw when I was working with Vodafone, the organization had a very clear philosophy that any person, any leader cannot be in the same role for more than 2 to 3 years, beyond which he has to either take up a new role or move or learn a new skill, or take up a vertical elevation. So that being one of the guiding principles. So the organization must have a clearly defined talent philosophy. The success model rolls behaviors into the outcomes. In a classical competency model, it contrasts with the classical competency model to bring the life of leadership behaviors which are really impactful for the company. The talent review, succession planning, those are really the final processes that have to deliver leaders for the company. At the end of it, we want to create an employee engagement framework where people are not only working because they have to, but they also have an emotional commitment to the company, and they really put in that discretionary effort and deliver value. Okay, we come to the performance management, the OPTM way. How can we really do the performance management? So what goes into the performance management through the OPTM lens? Feedback. The science says that feedback or the feed forward can improve performance. When we talk to people about performance, what to do more, what to do, clear goals always help people in their behavior change. Can we eliminate complexity? We talked about one element where we said probably the element of applying weightages needs a relook. Similarly, can we just have one pager around solving the employee appraisal, those kind of things? Can we use 360-degree not only for behavioral change but also for evaluation and development? Eliminate complexity in the process that you take. Avoid self-assessments. I talked about it earlier. Do they really add value? Prioritize the key action items. Any employee or any leader who gets to act on 5, 10, 15 key items, those are not really key items. So what are the really important items? Provide specific advice for action. A lot of times the feedback or the feed forward which is given is very, very generic. Improve your communication. I mean, what kind of communication? Improve your analytical skills. There could be a far more specific, actionable advice for action. And then transparency and accountability. We have talked about it, so I'm not going to spend time here, but let the consequence be clear to the incumbent and watch them year on year if we are making progress on the provided guidance around the behavior change, and to make the process transparent so that it also builds ownership. Okay, here we talk about Karma Notes, which is one of our technology tech tools on providing performance feedback to employees on a real-time basis. It's an all-pervasive tool, so let's quickly roll and talk about it. A real-time feedback. The Karma Notes provide the very, very real-time feedback. It's so simple that at times we think, okay, fine. Can it ever be so simple? Left and right swipes, feed forward using do more and do less on behavior. What do you want people and leaders and your peers and team members to do more and do less? Actionable insights. Clear focus area with 2 things that are going well and 2 things. If you tell people about 10 items, none will get actioned on. The feedback is never personal. The feedback is about what you want people to do more and do less. It's never a judgment about how people are. Nudging your employees. And you keep telling people to pass on feedback to each other. Smart notifications in this tool, they help really build a culture of giving and taking feedback. It also gives an opportunity for people to see who's doing what. Recognition can happen on the go. Just a swipe right, swipe left, swipe right to say going well, swipe left. Feed forward suggestions that you can articulate. You can really give feedback to your team members, your peers, your others in the company in less than 60 seconds. You can let us know if you want to try it out, try out the demo or use Karma Note in your organization. Okay. OPTM 360, very quickly. OPTM 360 is the way one-page challenge management approach to the 360-degree feedback tool. All of us probably are aware of a plethora of marketing, tools available in the market, which are very, very time-consuming, have a very, very detailed process, very, very lengthy reports that come in. But a lot of times we probably do not see a very, very crisp, actionable outcome. And that's where OPTM 360 comes in. What does science tell us? Feedback alone does not lead to change. We have to tell people about what to do for future. What has happened in the past has happened. What to do for future is what matters. There's no point comparing people. There's no point, attaching somebody to the norm or a benchmark. So relative scoring is just not recommended. Similarly, what do I think of myself versus what my reporting manager or others tell me is what happens when we do a self-assessment and gets to compare it with what our reporting managers tell us. But OPTM 360 prioritizes the areas where change is desired, where people think and believe you can do more. It's a web-based tool, provides feedback on others as perceived by the employee behavior, what you do on a day-to-day basis, how you approach your work, how you approach your various interactions. Takes just 10 minutes to complete. Very, very specific, doesn't get into essay writing, provides specific suggestions and focused only comment on priority items. People don't get to write on 10 different items, but only on the priority items. They choose a priority item looking at your behavior, what you need to do more or do less, and then you go about it. It can be used at any time a leader, manager, or an employee looks to develop and will benefit from it. Whenever you're looking for improvement, you can go for OPTM 360. And they typically lead to an IDP, an actionable IDP, not a confusing one, because it has very crisp, sharp priority areas defined. Just a small comparison with a typical 360-degree feedback tool. We've already talked about it. Reports just do not prioritize the most items to develop in a typical 360. In OPTM, you talk about the priority areas. Okay, so if you want to talk about any of these products, please feel free to write on office@saltodise.com. Okay, here's something that we are on the verge of launching. iEngage, our employee engagement tool. Probably in the last, we have also covered an employee engagement webinar in which Nitin, my colleague from SDF, also talked about the iEngage product. Starts with science. Many factors affect engagement, the work environment, type of leadership. What we are doing is we are trying to eliminate complexity, ask fewest questions possible instead of having 70, 80, 90 questions, ask what's relevant, provide data as deep as possible so that it's actionable and people can talk about it. The idea is to add value, create transparency, and create accountability. The tool has been designed in a very, very employee and manager friendly manner, gives very, very detailed reports. These are the SDF's employee engagement definitions. You have seen through it, so I will not spend much time here, but this is just for your quick look. And if in case you are interested, please feel free to reach out to us. This is the entire employee engagement framework that we are talking about. Advocacy, passion, involvement, and commitment that yield profitability, productivity, quite naturally, less absenteeism, lower attrition, and hence high attrition, and customer satisfaction. Happy employees always make happy customers. Okay, these are the outcomes. The proven engagement survey, it's based by science, so it's scientifically proven, very, very sharp, succinct reports. Insights with a clear call to action. The reporting manager clearly knows what areas he needs to work on and how to increase the employee engagement. Easy administration, the tool is very, very friendly and it can be quickly deployed. You can reach out to us for a complimentary survey for your organization, and we can help you with the complimentary engagement survey. To know more about it, please feel free to reach out to us and write to us at office@saltodise.com. Okay, any questions, everybody? Please. Okay, we have a few responses where Namita says, I understand that perhaps adding weightages to KRAs doesn't make one remember KRAs daily. How do you arrive at the overall performance rating at the end of the year? And if there are no weightages to individual KRAs? Oh, fair point. Okay, why eliminate self-assessment? Doesn't that help in understanding employees' perception and clarifying expectation? Okay, let me respond to that. So first I'll respond to Namita where she says about weightages. Do you really think, I will leave that as a comment and I won't really try and change the viewpoint here. But when you talk of weightages, does that 25% into say a 90% achievement or a 40% into an 85% achievement? Is that really the calculation, or do the employee behaviors, if that happens, does that math always lead to the desired rating? At the end of it, we all know that we go through the typical process of normalization or the distribution curve or that's another complexity for some other day. But at the end of it, the human life gets dependent on the bell curve or the mathematics of it. That's the whole point. We can talk about it separately as well, but the idea being that 25% or 30% or 40%, does that sum total really help employee in improving his performance for future? That being the point. Okay, the why eliminate self-assessment? Doesn't that help in understanding employee perception and clarifying expectations? Fair point, Sulochana. But that happens probably when the feedback is not more real time. In this day and age, a lot of employees are looking for real time feedback. And okay, so we have a lot of scribbling happening on the screen. Anyways, so if the feedback is happening on a real time basis, probably the employees do not need to write a self-assessment, and the gap between what they think of themselves and the manager is probably not the subject to be addressed at the end of the year. It will lead to more shocks, more surprises, and that's what it does on more occasions than not. So that's my take on that. Nitin has responded very well on those points of self-assessment. So you can go through that. Some goals are not important. So if you say something is like, say, a 15% weighted, at the end of it, employee can say, I've done 85% and I have achieved 120% on 85%. So that makes me 100%. So does that math really deliver the company or the business performance? I mean, that's the question. And that's precisely why we keep saying that, you know, the value complexity, we have to look at and guilty until proven otherwise. And hence we need to keep assessing those, asking those questions about the process steps that we take. Okay, do we have any questions? Any more questions? Okay, so somebody has requested to join the, send the presentation. Okay, I think we are pretty much towards the close of session. If there's any more questions. Okay, so with that, I come to the last part of thanking you all for your participation. We have gone through a series of webinars in last few weeks, various sessions, feed forward, how to make it boom, make it a boon, adaptive leadership, selecting the best candidate for your company, customer centricity. Nitin took us through the employee engagement survey, keeping employees engaged in these times. And today we are talking about the one-page talent management. I'm happy to share with you that all the webinars, the videos of all these webinars are duly placed, and even including this webinar, they will get placed on our website at saltodeepay.com in the resources section, where you go to the resources and then videos. So that's there. And that's pretty much, I thank you for your participation. I hope you had a good learning, and probably we learned a lot about OPTM and a few perspectives exchanged as well. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, everybody.